Here we are on March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And I've got the NHL offer sheet compensation pulled up. There's a reason for that because it's part of the many parts of our conversation today about JJ Peterka. Are we witnessing the last month of Peterka's Sabres career? We really might be. We'll tell you why that is on our minds today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. That does include checking us out on our YouTube channel, where you can like and subscribe the show there, where you can watch us. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use Locked On NHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a game day. We have got a lot to get to on today's show. A weekend win over Jack Eichel and the Golden Knights, a Monday night affair against the Boston Bruins, and some reporting on JJ Peterka that I think is completely believable, and it really might indicate that this is a player that the Sabres are going to have to say goodbye to in relatively short order, whether that's this offseason or very quickly after that. We are going to find out. We'll tell you what Frank Saravelli of the Daily Faceoff said today that has us talking about Peterka today and what are the Buffalo Sabres options with him, given that the overall sentiment from Saravelli was that Peterka is somebody that wants a change of scenery. And we have to go into that today on the show. Saravelli is not a blog guy. He is not just, whoever talking about hockey that isn't plugged in. He is plugged in. He is an insider. He gets things right all the time. He breaks news all the time. And I think it's completely believable what he is saying about Peterka today. So we'll get to that coming up on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you're looking to join our text club, you could have been in there sharing your opinion on Peterka today. If you're not already a member, you could sign up by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. And you'll have some line updates, of course, for today, game day, and also tonight's game against the Bruins. Don't have much to say about tonight's matchup against the Bruins other than the Bruins are struggling. They have lost 3 in a row. Go pull up their lineup and tell me that the Bruins they're not done. They're totally cooked. They are no longer going to be a Stanley Cup contender. They are going to hang on by a thread to being a playoff team for this year and next year. They might miss the playoffs. They might come close, but their days of being a Stanley Cup contender are over in Boston. Go look at their lineup. You won't recognize half the names. Casey Middlestat, arguably, is the Bruins' number 1 center. I don't think he'll be that by ice time because he's not playing with Pastrnak. Pavel Zacha still is. But Middlestat's basically their 1A, 1B center. That's where they're at. The Sabres were ahead of that curve last year when Middlestat was their third-line center. So I don't think the Bruins have anything left in the tank. The Sabres lineup, man, a lot of injuries with Josh Norris out. Lindy said he's expected back late this week. JJ Peterka out today. He's expected back in their next meeting against Utah. And also Yuri Kulich is out after getting hit in the head against Vegas on Saturday. I got more to say on that in a moment. Not good at all on that hit. And what that means is that Tyson Kozak, 4th-line center with Beck Malenstein and Sam Lafferty, okay? Brett Murray enters the lineup. I don't know why Isak Rozan is not going in. I would have liked to see him in the lineup, but Brett Murray is going in instead. Here's a fun fact about Brett Murray. Brett Murray is the last player in the Sabres organization that was drafted by Tim Murray. I don't believe there's any relation between the two. But Tim Murray's last draft pick in the Sabre organization is Brett Murray. Of course, more of a Rochester American as of late. But, man, Murray's had a good couple of years here in the AHL. 23 goals this year in 55 games, 17 goals last year in 54. Big winger, 6'5", 230. He's been a good playoff player for the Amherst as well. And like, really, we think he's going to give the Sabres any less than Sam Lafferty has this year, or what Nicholas Aube-Kubel was earlier in the year? They probably should have tried Brett Murray on as a fourth liner sooner. He's just not a very good skater. And that's really, I think, what holds him back from being an NHL player. But otherwise, he's been a very good AHL player. So good, deserved that he gets to be in tonight's lineup. So going back to Saturday, a couple of observations. One, since I already mentioned it, the hit that Yuri Kulich takes, he's coming back from the corner, working it back to the blue line, and he takes a massive check from Brett Hoden. And I don't know what, like, the officials are making it so hard on the Sabres they're doing exactly what you should do. Peyton Krebs sees his rookie center get blasted in the head, helmet off. What does he do? Exactly what he should do. Drops the gloves, and he goes and fights him. And Howden drops the gloves immediately too. There's no delay. It's immediate, one after the other. They know we're fighting here. So they fight, and okay, let's go to the penalties. One, unbelievable that there was no penalty on Howden for the hit. I know that he didn't leave his feet or that he didn't raise his elbow, but the principal point of contact was the head. Therefore, that's got to be a penalty in today's NHL. If you hit a dude in the head, it doesn't matter what you hit him with. That's got to be a penalty. It wasn't. Krebs gets the instigator. Okay, that's fine. He did. He ran over and he fought. So really what you should have had the referees called it properly, would have been a 5 and a 2 for Howden and a 5 and a 2 for Krebs. Even. Instead, not only was it 5 and nothing else for Howden, it was a 5, a 2, and a 10 for Peyton Krebs. And I never saw an explanation for what the 10-minute misconduct was for. Jersey coming up, I never saw that. Didn't rip Howden's helmet off from what I saw. I just don't understand why he got. Now, again, maybe it doesn't really. In the fight, Krebs doesn't throw a punch while Howden's on the ground. I don't see what it could have possibly been. So terrible job by the officials. Anyways, that happened. I definitely underestimated Sabre fans. There definitely was a lot of loud booing for Jack Eichel. And I will say that I saw a lot of, Sabre Sportsnet tweeted out the clip of the Sabres fans booing Eichel. And a lot of people I saw with like, was so lame by the Sabres. This is why you have a 14-year plan, whatever. And listen, they're sports fans. And also, I think the take I saw that was the most ridiculous was that Sabre fans are signing off and supporting their front office when they boo Jack Eichel. And I understand how you could arrive at that point. It's part of the reason why I would not boo Jack Eichel now when I'm in that crowd. If I was for that game, I was not on Saturday, went to the St. Patrick's Day parade. But that's why I wouldn't boo, is I don't blame Eichel. Eichel had every reason to want out, and Adams acted like a child on the way out when Eichel wanted out. So I'm good. I don't like Eichel, but I'm not booing him. I booed him the first time, and then he said what he said. I booed him the second time, and now I'm good. I'm over it. But what's the leave fans alone, man? Anyone that's booing to me is one of those things where if you want to boo, you have every right to do it. You pay the money to do it. This product is a joke over 14 years. And the guy used to play for you. We're not new here. Any bewilderment that Sabre fans would boo Jack Eichel, look around the league. The Islanders fans booed John Tavares when he came back. It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. Unless the guy won a cup, then it's going to happen everywhere. The only thing I will say is it is a little strange to me that Reinhart doesn't get booed. Ristolainen doesn't get booed. Allmark doesn't get booed. O'Reilly doesn't. Maybe he did at the start, but he doesn't now. Eichel does. All those guys wanted out. And the only difference is the Sabres dragged out the Eichel trade. So he was the best player, and that probably is the most important factor. Not just that his trade situation lasted the longest. Reinhart basically told the Sabres, I'm not signing, and they traded him immediately. There was no drag it out, allow more time for the fans to turn against you, right? Ristolainen wasn't going to sign an extension with the Sabres. He was traded immediately that offseason. Eichel, it was, okay, we know it's going to the trade's going to happen, and then 6 months went by, and then he was traded. I think a lot of anguish could have been built up in those 6 months. But it's not just that. I think the two of the bigger reasons are, of course, one, he was the best player on the team, and two, he acted like a child after the first Sabre game when he came back the first time and said what he said in post-game about the building had never been louder, and he acted like a little baby. And I think that also turned a lot of people against him to where he's the one who is still being booed and the other guys are not. So I guess it does make sense that he still would get booed. Sabres win. What a game. You know, they outplayed Vegas. And I'm not reading anything into, Dahlin had a comment after the game about, oh, the vibes are different now. I think we figured some things out. I think that's just something you say after you win a game. They haven't figured anything out. They're in last place still. They won a game. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. They haven't figured anything out. Bad teams have good games, and they deserve to win this hockey game. They were a better team than Vegas. They had more shots. They had more shot attempts. They were the better hockey team against the Golden Knights, and they deserve to win. They got a little bit of a break that Tomas Hertl tried to get Eichel his second goal, which to me was insane by Hertl. Eichel already scored the game-winning goal. Go put it away and allow him to have the game-winning goal rather than have the Sabres have the chance to come down and ruin that for him, which they did. And kind of poetic or not even poetic, I don't know what it is, but that Eichel, the guy that got out, scored what he thought was the game-winning goal, and then Dahlin, the guy who said, I don't want out this week, is the one who came down and tied the hockey game with a bomb from the point. Tuck, a former Golden Knight, scores in a shootout. Cool game. Great game to be at. Afternoon game on a Saturday, St. Patrick's Day parade. Seems like a good time. The bar for the Sabres right now, between now and the end of the season, is don't have your fans mad when they leave the building in the few remaining home games that you got. That's it. If you got people that bought tickets to come watch you, you're not going to make the playoffs. Just don't let those people leave angry. That's your bar. That low bar for the rest of the season. Sabres and Bruins tonight. All right, when we come back, what is Frank Saravelli saying about JJ Peterka, and what are the Sabres going to do about it? It's not an easy answer. We'll get to it when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Factor. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week. You can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's Calorie Smart or Protein Plus or Keto, which I've done in the past, and that's that can be tough sometimes to shop for. And Factor makes that very easy. They also offer smoothies, breakfasts, snacks, so you always have something nutritious ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code factorpodcast to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. It's code factorpodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. This episode of Locked On Sabres also presented by Wonderful Pistachios. Speaking of eating healthy, pistachios, man, that's my I need them. I just keep my New Year's resolution. Pistachios have come up clutch for a snack, a salty snack that is healthy for you, both delicious and nutritious. Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein. That's over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats that help keeping you feeling full longer. I love the no shells variety. Perfect grab and go snack. Makes it really easy. But if you like the shell variety, those are available to you as well. Amazing how much protein they really pack into these little nuts. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Again, check out wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Not necessarily a subject matter that I am excited to talk to you about on today's show, but it's coming from a trusted insider, and I think we have to have the JJ Peterka talk, given what Frank Saravelli of the Daily Faceoff said on Monday morning or Sunday, whenever he recorded his most recent podcast. And the quotes from Saravelli are kind of damning about Peterka. And remember, Saravelli was one of the two reporters on trade deadline day that was saying the Rangers were in on Peterka. And he clarified today that the Sabres never actually went in on that. The Sabres never seriously considered it. They didn't want to talk about a Peterka trade. So when he said they were deep in talks, what he said it ended up only resulting at was the Rangers got to a point where they made an offer, but that was it. The Sabres didn't consider it, and the Sabres didn't counter, and obviously didn't take it. So what did he say exactly? Well, let's read you the quotes from Saravelli today. Quote, "There have been a few malcontents in Buffalo that would like a change of scenery. I think Peterka is one of them. Quote, I know that the Rangers were one of 2 or 3 teams to put a bona fide, legitimate offer on the table for Peterka. I think they offered up a roster player and a first-round pick. I don't know who the roster player was." Time out for a moment. My personal belief, my guess is that Chris Kreider was the player that they offered, but I do not know that. But my guess is Kreider. Continued. "If he signs an offer sheet, then what? He may find his way out, whether the Sabres want him to or not." That is Saravelli today on Peterka. The first line, though, is the most important part of that. There have been a few malcontents in Buffalo that would like a change of scenery, and I think Peterka is one of them. I have said on this show for a month now that there are always these little whispers about Peterka that make me totally believe what Saravelli is saying here. I totally believe what he is saying. And I would think right now that if you're a Sabre fan that loves Peterka, maybe you should start mentally preparing for the idea that he is eventually going to get traded. If you're someone that's buying a jersey for JJ Peterka or buying a Sabre jersey and you're trying to figure out what player to pick, maybe you shy away until a contract situation is figured out. Maybe he does sign, and then you do it. But right now, if I were recommending to a buddy of mine or whoever, like what jersey you should get, I wouldn't be recommending Peterka. I'm mentally preparing for the idea that he is going to get traded. But we'll see. The Sabres still have leverage. They have a lot of control. Peterka is just now hitting RFA status. The Sabres still have multiple years of control. This is not the Bo Byram situation where Byram could tell them, I'll sign for 1 year and then I'm becoming an unrestricted free agent. Peterka can't tell the Buffalo Sabres that. So he doesn't have no leverage either. He's not under contract. And I don't know if he really wanted to make it ugly. I don't predict this. He could say, all right, well, I'm going back to Germany until you decide to trade me. And I'm not playing for you and I'm not signing. He could do that. And that's a bit of leverage that he has. He has a team over there in Red Bull Munich that would probably welcome him back with open arms, that has been developing him since he was a kid. And he went back there and we saw the love fest in the preseason. He could do that, but that's an extreme. I think that's a pretty far extreme for Peterka if he really wanted out that badly. So the Sabres really have two decisions here. And maybe the middle ground that the Sabres and Peterka could find is, why don't we sign a 2-year bridge contract? We won't do the long-term deal. 2-year bridge contract, and you give us 2 more years. And maybe you learn to love it a little bit more here in Buffalo, or maybe the team is winning by then and you're a little bit more, you're a little bit more content with the which is the competitiveness of the team, and you'll choose to stay here. And you'll help us meanwhile along the way. Kind of a win-win for both sides is the bridge contract if they don't want to make things ugly right now. That's one option. I want to get to what the other options are, because maybe you might think time to do it. If he's not going to be here long term and we're going to have to be thinking about whether he's happy or whether he's ever going to sign with us long term. When do you get out? That's the best question. If you don't think he'll ever sign a long-term extension with you, when's the right time to pull the chute? When do you think you get the most for him? And I've got a couple thoughts on that. And also what Saravelli said about the offer sheet idea. The compensation on that, and why, to me, offer sheet is risky for Peterka. It could get him what he wants. It also could get him what he doesn't want, depending on what the Sabres would do. I want to get to the offer sheet part of this when we come back, because I think it's juicy. That when we return here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, as we're talking JJ Peterka rumors here going into the final month of the season. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all that money go? Between dining out, online shopping, golf, entertainment, easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop managing your money, stop just managing your money, and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's right, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL, and you're going to get half off your entire first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We're talking JJ Peterka trade. Saravelli's got us fired up about that today. Looking through some of our texts today about this rumor. One person said, Sabres are matching any offer sheet. The Rangers have nothing we want unless it's Schneider or Lafreniere. First and Kreider, no way. Sounds like JJ's just not around long term. That's what I don't get about this offer sheet scenario. Anything less than 9.1, I'd match. So that is where we get to the offer sheet part of this. Saravelli mentioning offer sheets. The offer sheet is a risk for Peterka. And let's say, for sake of conversation, that all this smoke is true, that he does want out. He wants out. Let's just say that's true. If you're Peterka and Peterka's agent, let's look at the offer sheet option. Okay, you find a team that's willing to give you the long-term extension. 7-year deal, $8 million, $7.5, $8 million per year. You sign it. You sign with Carolina. Carolina signs you to a 7-year offer sheet. And you don't want to be in Buffalo. That's your risk. You're daring the Sabres to sign you to a 7-year contract. You're giving them the right to match a 7-year deal. And now, I'm in Buffalo for 7 years. Again, this is if he really does want out, and we don't know that. It's being rumored about. It's being reported about. It's being whispered about. We're not sure yet. But there's smoke. And sometimes when there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes when there's smoke, there's just smoke. The offer sheet could lock him into Buffalo. And if that's not what he wants, then the offer sheet doesn't make any sense unless he and his agent would believe there's no way the Sabres will match. The Sabres, who always talk about players that want to be here, are going to do what? They're going to match a 7-year deal for a guy that they know doesn't want to be a Buffalo Sabre? Really? Because that is signing up for an ugly situation. You might get the guy kicking and screaming, I'm not playing for you. And then you got to trade him on the new contract. And that is its own bit of leverage. We could debate whether or not that's actually a good situation or a bad situation. I think you might be coming from a point of weakness because other teams would know you've got to trade him. And you might eliminate a lot of suitors because that you might get a big cap number or a contract that they don't want to sign up for. And also you could just take the compensation. Now, I wouldn't do that. If the rumor from Saravelli is that the Rangers were offering a first-round pick and a legitimate NHL player, well, let's look at the offer sheet compensation. I think, the undoubted most likely scenario for an offer sheet for Peterka is that it would fall between $6.87 million and $9.16 million. I don't believe it'd be below 6.8, and I don't believe it'd be above 9.1. That'd be crazy. So, if it's in that range, the compensation is a first, a second, and a third. And if it's a good team, especially, that is offer sheeting Peterka, I don't want a late first, a late second, and a late third. I don't want any part of that. The Ranger offer would be better than that. Honestly, I want to do better. I don't want to, Adam said it himself, I don't want to make trades for picks and prospects. Well, taking the offer sheet compensation is essentially trading for picks and prospects. So now you got to decide, if you think Peterka wants out, when's the right time to trade him? And to me, it's before you get anywhere near a team talking to him about an offer sheet. You do it the moment the offseason kicks into gear. You get the most you can. Maybe you take that Ranger offer. Maybe you see if it's still on the table, because you don't want to just get picks and prospects. So if you've got a team out there that's offering a legitimate player, and even if I'm right, and I'm just guessing that Kreider would be the NHL player because he's been a healthy scratch at times this year and the contract's not great and he's 33 years old. He's not as valuable a commodity as he once was. 18 goals, 4 assists in 54 games this year. He's still a veteran player, though, that would play in your top 6. And if you're the Sabres, are you going to do better than that? How confident are you that you're going to do better than a top 6 player, even if it's one that's declining, and a first-round pick? And remember, the Rangers' first-round pick is going to be in the middle of the first round, not the late first round, because they're having a down year. So I'd like to do better than that. I don't know how realistic it is, though, that they would do better than that. The perfect move for Peterka, if he wants out, is to make a hockey trade. Do the Cousins trade again, but I don't know if that's out there for them. Those are tough. 2 in 5 years. They made one back-to-back seasons, so maybe Adams, this is his specialty, is the hockey trade, but I don't know. I think the best course of action, if he's going to get traded, is to do it as fast as possible and get the most you can before offer sheet becomes a threat. But I do, as I said earlier, I'm starting to mentally prepare for the idea that Peterka is not long for the Buffalo Sabres. I think Peterka and Byram right now are the 2 guys to watch for the most when it comes to, who's malcontent. He says a few are malcontent. Well, Darlene says it's not him. If I had to take 2 guesses right now and who those people are that would like a change of scenery, it's Byram and Peterka. That'd be my guess at this moment in time. All right, Sabres and Bruins, enjoy the game. I think the Bruins stink. I think the Sabres could very easily win this hockey game. I think the Sabres are arguably just as good, if not better, than Boston. We'll see. The Bruins fighting for their playoff lives. The Sabres are not, but Boston, by the way, 4 points out of a playoff spot, but they have 5 teams they need to climb over in order to get into a spot. So they are running out of time. They got to get on a hot streak, and the Sabres can keep them down if we don't want to see the Bruins in the playoffs again. Enjoy the game. That'll do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Of course, be sure to make your second listen Locked On NHL, bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter, where the local coverage that you love from Locked On combined with the national perspective. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And we'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.